Just to keep it the order of the agenda, first up is commercial use trailers. That's a hot topic as of late. So going through our ordinance and myself and Jay trying to sit down and figure out what do we do about commercial use trailers. If you look at our current ordinance, commercial use trailers, they're required to have a registration and permit. Right here, see if I can figure out this laser. So right here is where, when we met with the general contractors a while back, there seemed to be a little bit of disconnect and some issues they were having. Is it says no commercial use trailer shall be permitted that exceeds 7 feet at its widest point from outside wheel edge to outside wheel edge, and overall length exceeds 20 feet. I can tell you, based off of my research, you cannot buy a trailer 7 feet from wheel edge to wheel edge. You cannot do. You can have one custom made, which is going to cost you a lot of money for a very small trailer. So looking into the trailers, I believe it would be best if we give them some sort of option, because right now they have no option. Now, what that is determined to be by council, but I say we continue researching trailers. I've researched some trailers and figure out what we're happy with. Being able to have an annual ice permit on the trailer and go up and down the roadways. But right now, we're not giving them any options. And that was one of the things that was brought up in that last general contractor meeting. The other part of that is because they're not eligible to meet this requirement, they're required to get a daily permit from Barge Landing. The daily permit allows for a trailer to come to the island and be parked on a job site. That is it. And then when it leaves that job site, it goes right back to the barge and off the island. The daily permit does not allow for it to be driven up and down the roadways. It is a point A to point B to back to point A. But it's almost nearly impossible to enforce that, because as they're getting daily permits from the barge, they pull up to the barge landing on the other side. I need a daily permit for this trailer. Here's your permit. They get the $75 and that's it. We have no idea what trailer's coming to the island, who it belongs to. So in order for them to get, and the way I read this is, this applies to all commercial use trailers. That doesn't just apply to annuals. It should also apply to dailies as well. We should be getting this information from them so that we have an idea of whose trailer they are, where they're going. And we can start keeping a list to make sure that they're not going up and down the roadways when they're not supposed to, these large dump trailers and oversized trailers. So in order to do this, we're going to have to change a little bit. So like I said, right now, they just pull up, get a permit. We're going to have to enact some sort of application process, even for dailies, just same as we do for annuals. So we're working on that currently, of how that will look. And I do believe once that's enacted, we'll be able to get a little bit better grip on the trailers on the island, because now we'll know who they belong to, where they're supposed to be. And if they're not, then they're in violation. And see, well, if you scroll down just a little bit, if they're in violation, then they lose their permit. We can revoke their permit. But I think just that initial step will kind of give us more of an idea of what we're looking at. Is it how big is the problem? How much energy and effort do we need to put into fixing the problem? Right now, we just don't know. We did a 1-day survey around the island to try to figure out how many trailers there were. Those are the ones that we could see. So this, so at least we'll be able to give us an inventory of where they're supposed to be, and who they belong to.
I mean, Josh, just ask you a couple questions about all this. It sounds like we have a trailer ordinance that's unenforceable. I mean, if you can't get a trailer that meets our size requirements, then we need to look at that and figure out what the happy middle ground is, I think. We don't want huge trailers, that maybe we can't be that unreasonable.
Right, and I will say, based off of some of the research I've done, commercially available trailers, utility type trailers now, these are utility, like what you would think of going down the highway with a four-wheeler on the back of it or a lawnmower or something like that. Utility type trailers, that normal size of 5.5 foot by 9 foot trailer or 6 by 8, both of those fall under 8 feet, but anything under 7 foot 4 inches widest is just, there was one, I found one, but it was, you're not gonna put anything on it.
Yeah, right.
It was like a home use, running around the backyard kind of thing. So I do think we need to look into making an option for them, because right now we have limited them to nothing by this ordinance.
And then, so before we start tracking them and giving them citations, let's see what's reasonable and save the sword for when we give them something reasonable and they still disagree.
I understand that. I'm not saying we don't. Citations, yes, we can wait on that and try to figure out. I do think we should start at least getting an idea of what's coming to the island to start.
Yeah, and that would help us with our research.
And I think the only way you're gonna be able to do that is by, and in our ordinance, there is no section for daily permits when it falls under like this. This is actually considered for annual permits. We, but under dailies, we allow them to come over on a daily permit. So I just think that we apply this to the daily as well.
Mhm.
Create a form where they have to apply for it instead of just rolling up and saying, hey, I'm going to buy it with a trailer.
So, Josh, you said that we don't want trailers running up and down the island without knowing that they're legal or
Right.
vetted, blah, blah. So what, ultimately, I think we need to start with, what are we looking for in terms of contractors handling and dealing with their construction garbage? We want to help them. We want to be reasonable. But we also don't want them constantly moving these trailers back and forth. We kind of limit the amount of disruption on these small lines with golf cart traffic and people with kids on bikes and stuff. And so, helping them to get an understanding of what we're about and what we're trying to do, then let's talk about now, how do we get there? And I like what you're doing with, you've researched, you can't find what it is we want. So we gotta compromise. We gotta find something that works for them and works for us. Jay and I talked about this. We've got the big rollback trailers that, on a big job, the big truck comes over and it rolls off the back, and then when it fills up, they come pick it up and they haul it off the island. There's that option. There is some remodeling. I saw a lot of this after Florence, but that was a big remodeling project. But I think over time, there's going to be more and more relatively small remodeling projects. And for a contractor to have to bring a huge roll-off garbage container in the yard to fill it a quarter of the way full doesn't make sense. So finding an alternative where a builder may have one of these trailers and can move it when this job's over with, move it to the next job until he fills it up, move it to the next job until he fills it up, and then, some sort of middle ground option.
And maybe we could, consider time of day or days of week when trailers can be moved around the island to avoid.
So they're already on restriction. Trailers are already on restriction they have to operate in the defined workday, the ordinance, which is Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So that is in the ordinance, so they have to abide by the workday definition. Any changes to that, we got to put in, but
And we're focusing also on trailers, but I'm seeing bigger and wider pickup trucks.
we're going, that's the
Side
next,
mirrors that go way out there.
Duly.
that's the next section. That's coming up too.
Okay.
So the trailer issue, so we've been talking about being for construction debris, but there are other trailers brought for different reasons too, though, right?
Yes, so, I don't know how to pronounce it, Ferrer.
Oh, yeah, prayer.
They have to be able to get all the landscaping items out when they're clearing out areas.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, I think they're helping with the conference park right now. So there are other uses.
But that's primarily, we're talking about the dumpster stuff.
Yeah,
So when it came up at the meeting with the contractors, is it something they brought up or something you guys mentioned?
so they brought up the fact that they don't meet they can't meet the ordinance.
Okay, okay,
And then the ones who thought that they did was because there was some variation on this and right here. They're saying, well, it says that if it exceeds 7 foot from wheel to wheel and 20 feet. Well, mine's shorter than 20 feet, so it doesn't matter how wide it is because it says and. So there's some.
It's a difference in and or. Like, and we, yeah.
it's often important.
So again, we have another meeting coming up with general contractors. We'll get more information, especially now that we've done some research into trailers, because we had not at that point, when we met with them the first time, because they're actually meeting for a different reason, and that came up. So here, we'll continue that as process, but I think we, more or less, we're looking into it. We're trying to
Okay.
figure out what the best option is gonna be going forward. When we have what we think will be the best option, we'll present it. And
Okay, yeah.
then you guys can say, nope, don't worry.
I mean, because then there's that other thing about having to be off the street, right?
Right.
So, that all falls in.
Yes, that's, if you scroll
Coming down there.
it's highlighted as well.
Okay,
So, number 3, no time may a commercial use trailer be parked on the village street or right away.
yeah,
That's already in.
right. I know it's already in it, and it's hard to meet in some
Right.
places, quite frankly, so.
Uh,
I would assume, Josh, in the application, the daily thing, that once you had an application on your process of, like, if you're somebody that brings something over every 3 weeks, that your application just, you wouldn't go through the whole application process, your stuff would be brought up and you get updated.
Right, you would just need to renew.
Just
the
say,
different
yeah,
date
yeah,
Of when you're coming.
Yeah.
And then you would pay that $75
Right.
daily again. Yeah,
Yeah, just,
that's where we stand right now.
yeah. So, but you're meeting, you have plans to be meeting with the contractors about the issue. I mean, one thing that, when I was listening to you, I was thinking, okay, so we can't find things that are smaller. What are we gonna do about it now? What crossed my mind was actually, well, what if you can't change the condition, maybe you can change when it happens. So is it, you say, well, they can work from whatever your time schedule that you had. It's like, well, yeah, that's all well and good, but these trailers aren't moving around the island except for the hours of bang to bang. And so it becomes common knowledge. It's like, well, I know if I'm driving around the island and I'm coming down, I'm gonna be stuck behind a garbage truck at 8 o'clock in the morning on South Bald Head Line. Is it, well, know that if I'm gonna set my kids loose on bicycles, they're moving trailers around the island right now between these hours. I don't know that that's a solution, but it's
So the
remediate.
issue that you would have with that is when they come to the island, the barge only runs 4 or 5 times a day. So they'll be going down the road because they have to get somewhere off the barge.
Got it.
And I think that the daily permit allows, the way that we're doing the daily permit and the function behind it is, okay, you can bring the bigger trailer, but you gotta go to a job site and park it there. And then it doesn't leave the job site until it's ready to go back to the barge. Is great. there was just no way for us to enforce that because we have no idea what's coming over. And that's why I think the application process will give us a better handle on.
But that also, as Scott was talking about, so I know somebody brings a trailer over, but might go to 3 different home sites to pick up the junk that needs to be taken off the island. Disposal stuff.
And frankly, when people put those wood boxes out for construction debris or whatever, and then Island Contracting, whatever, comes over with the tractor, that's more dangerous to me than the trailers.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I agree. It scares me to death.
So we definitely gotta do some more.
We got some work,
research on it.
but
We gotta do have a meeting coming up with general contractors, kind of get some stakeholder input. So it's not just us deciding.
Well, I think we all had a vision of how we wanted the island to be, but the realities are pushing back. We need to sort out where we're going with it. With open minds, I hope.
And I will just say with some of the conversations I've had with contractors that if some sort of new regulation or something isn't put in, that the amount of these dump trailers coming to the island is going to increase more exponentially than just a couple coming. I think a lot more coming if there isn't some sort of change to how we're doing things currently. So just keep that in mind that that's what I've been hearing. It's more coming.
And when you're saying the dump trailers, you're talking about the ones that are kind of rolled off in a flatbed?
Yeah, kind of, I would assume most of them are gonna be kind of the larger red, kind of big trailer that you see.
Yeah, I was-
That style.
Okay.
The cabooses. Big red caboose,
Correct. That would
big
really
red.
be there to replace some of the roll-off construction dumpsters.
All right.
I just want to follow up on that. It kind of begs the question, is that why would they need more big trailers? If building permits are down a bit and we're not seeing a lot of big construction, why do we need more big trailers? Is that a threat?
I don't think I think it's a market reaction to somebody who's lost money. It's a service to kind of replace roll-off dump trailers or the roll-off construction containers. That you will see a lot less of those and more of these trailers.
well, but potentially that's fewer trailers on the island, right?
Yeah, so, and
I
that,
mean,
that kind of, so with the roll-off containers, we somewhat have control over that. Because
Okay.
once they're rolled off into the property, you know they're not going anywhere. They're gonna be there till the job's done.
right.
Because they can't pull that around with their truck, right?
But with the dump trailers, they can hook up,
Hook up and
run over
drive
here,
out.
come back later.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So one of the things too, we've heard from a contractor out there, just when this started being discussed, starting at last month's meeting. The issues of how they feel like dump trailers are necessary. I guess it's a little bit more efficient for them to be able to put as much materials in it, but there's some issues even with some of the arguments that are coming up because in one hand, they're saying the dump trailers are easy to move it off, like adjust it on the site, as opposed to you having a roll off and it stays in a certain specific spot. But if they're trying to navigate, even when they mention very small lots, sometimes you don't have room for the situation where they're bringing construction materials on site. Well, if they've got a trailer, where are they putting it? They're basically taking it off the site and putting in the street. Well, they're also then navigating and managing other stuff in that whole area, which technically isn't allowed to have the trailer sitting in the median or right away or in the street kind of situation. So I don't know, Stephen, in those kind of situations, like how are they allowed to manage a site when they have multiple items that they're trying to juggle and states saying that they're using a dump trailer for that reason?
I mean, things get put in medians. Obviously, we had a conversation earlier about medians being abandoned and things like that. And the sites are not really big enough for the amount of debris and materials that they're storing, plus their personal vehicles for the guys that are working. I mean, it's almost impossible to move stuff around without, at least temporarily, putting stuff out in a median or right away if you're in a cul-de-sac or something like that.
A lot of our wines don't have medians.
Right.
That makes it even more complicated.
But even with the roll-offs, they're having to do something similar because they're having to drop the one that they're replacing with the full one, pick up the full one, take it somewhere, and then, I mean, they're still shuffling, whether it's a trailer or roll-on dumpster. There's typically always gonna be some moving, shifting, and trying to not block emergency access, at least for any longer than you absolutely have to. A lot of times they are.
The problem is worse when you have small lots. Because there's just not enough space to,
But I mean,
Sure.
even a lot of the larger lots, we're only allowing them to clear the minimal, for driveway access, and then your limits of construction are pretty tight around the building. So even in larger lots, you're still running into similar issues.
So-
Unless it's, on the beach where it's pretty open,
right,
South Ball Head, some of those, Black Skimmer, those where there's really no vegetation.
plenty of room to do that.
Right, those are the few lots that you don't have as much problems, but
The backside of the Dune Ridge, Cape Fear Station, all those places, it's more and more difficult.
God forbid anybody has to build a park.
Right.
Because I mean, we're usually they used to could kind of work something out with somebody who owned a lot and had built on it. But those are becoming few and far between, so now you really have nowhere to.
You have people have nowhere. Nowhere. So, I
Well,
mean,
that's-
it's hard to make rules when there's no way to comply with them either.
And unfortunately, these things aren't just popping in, by helicopter and being dropped off.
Right.
So, I mean, it's certainly a difficult solution to figure out what's best and reasonable.
And there's no limitation on how long they could leave a trailer, a construction.
While construction is ongoing.
Well, yeah, and that lasts for ever.
What? This may be controversial, you guys may disagree with me, but I think as a village government, I think we have an obligation to help a homeowner and their builder find the space for their waste trailer and the materials. We gotta find a way to help them. Can't be, I don't think we should be obstructionist about that.
I agree with you, but if it's a small lot, we can't tell them to put their dumpster elsewhere or to put their building materials elsewhere and then run trailers back and forth to take stuff.
Well, then maybe we can, instead of construction limits around the home, or don't take out too much vegetation, and this may be where we bring the association in, but during construction, we gotta give them space to do their work. Or instead of finding them every day, because they got a construction trailer in the right of way, or they got materials in the right of way. I mean, if you were a builder and you needed to build a home, and you weren't allowed to put the construction trailer and materials legally to build that home, what would you do?
I'm not arguing. I'm just saying, if, like, I'll pick the one I'm familiar with recently, is the 6 lots that put it in a Station House Way. 4 of the 6 at their widest are less than 39 feet wide. Where are they gonna put everything?
Exactly.
But that's also a decision to allow that subdivision to be so small. By definition creates a problem.
But it really only creates a problem for the last people in. Because to your point, like in the harbor, those are small too, but you always had a neighbor's
Always
empty
had
lot
neighbor.
or something. So you're being punitive to the last person in.
Well, these.
And maybe that's the solution, is we think about it along the lines, the last person in, we're gonna make some accommodations for them somehow. I don't know. I don't still think we need to be helpful.
Oh, I agree.
Not obstructive.
Oh, I agree. And then we have to balance that with the safety issues of blocking roads
Absolutely,
and all
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
absolutely.
And,
I think we should also open, having conversations about a big fix as opposed to little fixes.
Hmm.
I mean, trying to, the construction that was done on Portsmouth over the past couple of years, major, the issues, well, we can't get an ambulance through here.
Yeah.
We don't have anywhere else to put our trash
Hmm.
as well. And so I think there's a solution that has to be research that we have a bigger answer than how are we gonna handle the problem in this little square? Because we're not gonna be able to. So we gotta find big squares somewhere. And that might be what you're talking about in terms of, well, the village needs to step in because we're asking people to do something that can't be done.
Stephen found a solution for Portsmouth by asking people to park along Federal Road. That helped, great deal of that. But my sense of the island is that that's not always a possibility.
Right. I mean, Portsmouth was just an easy example. There's a lot of places that, you know, you'd be on some of the cul-de-sac, you know, go down your street, all of a sudden I got a truck on the road. Hate to tell you, if you're down the end of the street and having a heart attack, you're in trouble. Yeah. So,
I mean, I'll say with a lot of this, obviously, when chapter 28 was redone, it was a process. There wasn't a lot of flexibility built into that process, and it does sound like the ordinances could use some flexibility, if that's council's desire, but not great to have two unworkable solutions. Neither solution is workable.
Right.
I think my feeling is that we should be having these meetings with the builders, get more information, and then come back and see if we can find a happy middle ground, or at least begin to work toward it. It might have to be work in progress.
And I think that's our plan. I just wanted to give an update today of where we're at with that. We have a meeting scheduled.
We're proposing a meeting for I believe the 25th of February. I think it's the last Tuesday of the month.
I think one of the things that would help launch that conversation a lot is get very specific about the costs of each one of those, because people are chasing what they think is the low cost option, right? Whether for whatever reason. In bigger metro areas, I know for certain in New York, because I've dealt with it some, they tie the fee for the dumpster to the time that it's there, right? And that might be overly complex here, but it creates an incentive both for you to use it and get it out of there as quickly as possible, and don't use one that's too big. Because I think that's part of what we're running into is, if I brought the big thing out here, I'm gonna leave it out here till I fill it. And there's no real incentive to right size it to your job. And then we're, moving them around or trying to maximize it. So if we could get clearer on, how much each alternative costs, it might paint a clearer picture for folks that there's a less impactful way to do it, but that'd take a little bit of work, I
Yeah,
think.
that's an
I kind of wonder too, if you could even write into the planning of the site, a space for a requirement that you designate a space for things, and maybe there's some flexibility and it can be out, you can put a dumpster outside of it for certain periods, but it can't be outside of that for more than a day, if you're moving things. You could probably do some things with fees and planning of a site.
yeah.
So that's gonna impact the building pad though on a given lot.
It is.
So
Yeah.
right now, when
I know.
you're submitting drawings to the review board,
Right,
the HA review board, you gotta show, well, this is my laydown area.
right.
And, I mean, I've tried.
But that's for the BHA. I'm wondering if we could do some things where you could structure it.
Say
Yeah.
that as much as the intent is, I'm gonna define the use of this, construction use of this lot. The reality is, you have builders first source dropping stuff off. And all of a sudden, to control and think that you actually set up the barn that you're gonna load all this stuff into is, it's another reality question.
Right.
And I think that, the direction you're going, we can debate this all we want. And some contractor could have sat here for the last 10 minutes going, that ain't happening. That, it's just very clear. So I think the approach you're going, the direction you're going is the right way.
I just have one more question, and I don't know who's and when you're talking about contractors, are there other entities that should be included in this conversation?
So
And that's not something you have to answer now. It's just something to think about.
most of the trailers that we're seeing is for construction.
Right.
Like Phillips Air, they're using vans. They don't have trailers.
But I mean, are all the right people to be in the meeting at the meeting?
Okay,
with your major contractors? I mean, so are we excluding, not intentionally, but by definition or something? Excluding any entity that's impacting this and they have a voice being heard?
BHA, are you thinking, who are you thinking of? You mean exactly?
My first thought would be Builders First Sources, they're not a contractor.
Right,
but
right.
They're hauling
Right.
some big trucks around the island going to the jobs.
Yeah.
And, Guy, I don't know.
Guy Lee.
Guy Lee.
Guy Lee.
Guy Lee.
Same thing. And, yeah. And those are regulars.
Mhm.
Now, as far as this goes, so I've yet to see Builders First Source or Guy Sealy. They usually have the flatbed trucks. They won't have trailers, so that. Really.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the
We're
trailer.
not talking about the trailer issue necessarily, but
Where they lay material down relative to where they're only allowed to lay material down.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what you're getting.
And most of those truck drivers, based off what I've seen, they're gonna put it in whatever area is closest to the truck. that's
right,
Wide
absolutely.
enough and to put it there.
And then nobody can move that. I mean, it's that huge thing of lumber there. It's not, you just don't lift that up and put it somewhere.
All right, next up on the agenda here is chapter 28, annual permitting. So I go into Councilwoman White's statement earlier about big trucks. The next one, that's the third one, that commercial use vehicle. Okay, so doing some research into the ordinance here, again, this is gonna fall into that and or conversation. Because if you read it as if it has to meet, if it fails to meet either one of the standards we have, the dimension standards that we have, most of these large vehicles can't be on the island. They can get a daily permit and be here to drop off supplies, but then they have to leave. And they can stay overnight if they need to, but they can't stay they can't remain overnight within the village for a total of 5 nights or more during any consecutive 12 months. So these larger trucks, based off, now this is very limited research. Wow, it was 10:30 last night. But the 215 inches an F-150 crew cab will not meet that. It appears, and I wasn't a part of when they redid chapter 28, but it appears, but looking at this, that their vision was to keep the vehicles on the island to that mid-size range. Because the Toyota Tacoma fits in this, the Ford Ranger fits in this, the Chevy Silver, or the Chevy Colorado fits in this. But once you go up to that full-size truck, and again, it depends on how you read it, because as during the meeting with the general contractor got brought up, if you read it that it has to be and, then it meets, because these big trucks are less than 80 inches wide, they're just a lot longer than that. So it just depends on how you, it's that and or. If it fails one of them, then it can't. Then most of those big trucks on the island can no longer be on the island.
Contractors do, not him.
So, and again, that's kind of where I'm, going forward, we're gonna have to ask you guys for direction on, do you want it to be if they fail either one, or do you want it to be, well, they can be 290 something inches long, as long as they're less than 80 inches wide.
Well, I probably spent more time in reviewing this with a prior council than any other lawyer sitting at this table. And I am pretty positive that the group that was working on this intended for this to be 215 inches and 80 inches, not or 80 inches. You know, there's the whole debate on and or, and is and inclusive of or. It was not intended to be here. It would be my
So
guess.
that's what you're saying. You had it, I think contractors twisted you upside down.
Yeah. Or they're trying to at
The way-
least. Yeah.
The way I read that is it's got to be no longer than 215 inches and
And-
no wider than 80 inches.
Yeah.
So if you don't meet any one side of it,
Yeah.
it negates, you fail it, right? They're trying to use it the other way around, kind of.
Yeah, you can't have a 300-inch long trailer that's, 78 inches wide.
Correct. So if this is the vision of this council as
Vehicle,
well,
not trailer, but.
then we're gonna need to change how public safety does some things.
Uh-huh.
Because
Yeah.
and my recommendation to be in compliance with this ordinance is the vehicles who currently have an annual ICE permit, whether that be the F-250 or whatever, we allow them to renew for one more year in this July as a kind of grandfathered in with the mindset of July of 2026, when it's due again, they have to meet this dimensions to be able to get an annual ICE permit. And then going forward, all new ICE permits have to meet the ordinances that's set forth.
So in other words, we've got some ICE permits out there that don't meet the ordinance.
We have a great number.
A great number.
And let's dig into that a little bit. So how many, because I sit on my front porch on 429 South Bald Head, and I've done surveys over time of vehicles that comply with electric vehicles, blah, blah, blah. And by and large, out there drinking coffee. So, but,
I borrow some of that time.
huh?
I borrow some of that time.
Sure. I got nothing to do, man.
Paid for it.
So I've seen most everything seems to comply. Now, I don't know about the permit aspect of things, but every vehicle seems to be sized for the job they seem to be doing at that point in time. Every once in a while, you see a contractor foreman driving by with nothing but a 2x4 out the back end that probably could have been put on top of a golf cart, but wasn't. But I think you need to, I believe, having had a brother in the construction business who used to wear me out about this stuff, you need to, they need to have what they need to do the job. So I'm seeing more and more, again, evolving with the construction industry, I'm seeing more and more, what's the word, apparatuses being towed behind a vehicle that needs a bigger truck to tow it. Right? So I think we need to help them. But I think they don't need to run them up with it. So what if, how many contractors,
So
if you allow one oversized pickup per contractor that would allow them to move that apparatus and use that vehicle strategically, and then everything else has to be of smaller vintage.
So some of the initial thought processes was reducing these dump trailers, giving them a daily that's
Mhm.
supposed to go to the site
Mhm.
and then stay. Well, you're gonna need a bigger truck for those bigger trailers. So if they don't need this to get an annual, they would have to get a daily.
Mhm.
That way they can bring the big trucks over, they can drop off but it can't stay on the island and just run around. It has to go back over. And then your day-to-day smaller stuff, you would have a vehicle that meets the ordinance. All the contractors could have a vehicle on the island that meets the ordinance, where they can run paint or whatever they need to run back and forth. But you don't need an F-350 to run.
So if they were done with the large dump trailer supposedly on a site, whether they wanted to pay for another daily to move it to another site, or they were ready for it to come off the island to dump it, then theoretically they could again pay for another daily ICE permit for their oversized truck to get it off.
Can I ask you, Stephen, just historically, are we looking more closely or have things changed?
For the past, kind of ever since it ticked back up after, the big fall off, I think for the past 3 years, we've been pretty steady, with pretty high numbers.
Yeah, I'm thinking, so I'm looking at construction 10 years ago. And I don't remember these conversations 10 years ago or issues 10 years ago. And
Not
so,
that many of them.
yeah, so
Very few houses.
so the approach to solving construction problems has just changed.
Right.
And therefore, we're generating
From 10
bigger
years ago
trucks.
to today, we've probably doubled the amount that we're permitting change.
Because the activity has doubled from what it was,
Yeah.
or more than doubled.
Right now, we're keeping pretty steady 30 new homes going. That's not the remodels, commercial.
Got it.
So it's pretty well been between 30 and 35 for the past couple of years.
And how about remodels? How are those numbers looking compared to what they used to be?
It's always pretty steady. You're looking at probably 10 or 15 pretty significant.
Ongoing at a time?
Where I'm trying to get to with this is, if the, I look, changing the description, but if the technology changed and therefore we're doing this, if we're looking at, what a past council criteria set up, and they were looking at, like the way we used to do it, then,
I will say, I kind of see where you're going with that, I think. And last night, we didn't just look at new vehicles. This ordinance was written in 2019, I believe.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, it's not that old. It's not that old.
We went all the way back to 2010 vehicles. They still didn't meet this.
so the problem's always been here. And is it a problem that it's a problem because we're defining it this way, as opposed to it's a problem because they're doing it wrong?
No, Peter, I think it's a little different
I think
because I'm seeing bigger and bigger pickup trucks with wider, big mirrors off to the side.
yeah.
And I'm feeling more and more encroached upon on the road. Driving Edward Teacher, they go through, even though no IC vehicles, sometimes they come through for whatever reason they have to. And you basically have to get off into the woods to get out of the way. And I don't remember that 4 or 5 years ago. And I think, so for me, width is more of an issue than length, but I understand you're not gonna get a skinny long vehicle.
And to kind of piggyback off of Councilman Garner. I understand the need for those, you need a vehicle for that
Mhm.
equipment, but there's also that thought process of, well, if I'm gonna buy an F-350 to move this dump trailer on the island and get an annual ice permit, why am I not just going to continue, use it for everything on the island?
Mhm.
So then
Mhm.
it's not just being used for these big trailers, it's being used for daily,
Yep.
taking people to the job site,
Oh, yeah, there's a lot that go by me that don't have anything in them hardly.
Mhm.
And I like the idea of the daily permit for those. I mean, I think the other thing we have to look at is, people used to drive cars. And now we all want an SUV of some type. I mean, that's all, it's also just, do we need those great big things? Most of the time, no, right? But it's what people are driving, but I think we are looking at a situation of what's safe and what do we want to have, and I don't know that having a huge one, except for this case, is gonna speed up construction process at all, because they're not hauling
Yeah.
that much stuff in them.
Yeah, can I do something? Obviously, there's a big issue that we need to discuss and get more people involved in contracts, et cetera. We're not gonna solve it right here.
Mhm.
So let's let Josh go through the rest of your stuff and move on.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Thank you. You're welcome. The next thing is gonna fall right into what Peter said as well. So, there's gonna have to be some discussion about, that's the transition one. So currently in our ordinance, and this is to bring you guys up to speed on this, so currently in our ordinance, there is a ordinance here for the transition of compliance from ICE to electric. And there's some dates in there that's gonna have to be addressed because we in no way, shape or form at current time can meet this. So this was part of the Vision 2025. And it was put in here. We're gonna need council to change the date on this ordinance. July 1st, 2025 is just unobtainable at this point, if that's even still the route that we want to go. But if it is, it's fine, but we have to change that date, because that's gonna put a huge hindrance on everyone.
I was gonna say, I think that rabbit's already out of the hat. I don't think we could shove it back in.
Well, I'll say now, because I said it back then, I was opposed to having this at all. And thought it was a time bomb. I mean, time bomb, not really. It's not like we're in trouble, but I talked with some of the folks that were behind that group and they felt very adamant about it, but I don't mind saying again that I thought that was a bad idea.
And based off of looking over the ordinance and going down it, if that is something that we want to pursue, there's quite a bit of infrastructure that the island's gonna have to put in before we can say,
You have the
we
electric.
need electric vehicles. Yeah,
Yeah.
Can charge those suckers.
We just,
quite a bit of infrastructure that has to be done prior to.
yes,
Very expensive.
right. On this one, maybe let's consider a repeal on this piece.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Does the village have electric pickups?
No, we have one in next year's budget.
Start,
It is.
start.
We currently do not, because the larger size vehicles like the fire engine and ambulance would not do well as electric. And the patrol trucks, if we were to get electric vehicles, that would greatly reduce, actually take away our ability to do anything on the beach.
Mhm.
And electric vehicles and beach sand and water don't mix. We already have enough corrosion.
Say no more. Say no more.
So next up on the agenda is the capital operational equipment. That's the power bill. And I'll go through that quick because I'm well over.
We put you there.
All right, so this year
You could put it.
we are looking to.
Right.
We have some vehicle replacements that's needed. We're requesting additional personnel on the shift and a software program called Power DMS, and I'll explain that once we get to that. And the drone team equipment needs upgrading, and there's some station maintenance and repairs. As far as vehicle replacements go, due for replacement is the 2015 Toyota Tacoma, the 2017 Toyota Tacoma. The 15 we have already given over to Public Works. They were behind and getting vehicles from Public Safety, so we were able to go ahead and give them that one. So it's already been passed. That's one that we'll need to replace. The 2017 actually was labeled damaged in PTC 8, so the insurance company is replacing that. So to replace this one, the funds needed to provide the replacement is $50,000 for that.
Hey, Josh, just to clarify, the insurance company paid what we were owed on the truck. FEMA should cover the remainder of that. I just want to clarify that.
Okay.
Thank you, Zach. Additional personnel, requesting 4 additional personnel, one, that would put one PSO one additional PSO on each shift. That would give us a total of 7 on each shift. As we went to council and described a while back, kind of doing divisions within public safety. When we have this 7, that would be able to give us 4 firefighter medics for the fire and EMS division, giving us 2 assigned to the ambulance, 2 assigned to the fire units, and then 3 LEO firefighters for the law enforcement division, giving us 24-hour coverage on the law side with 2 officers. So there's not an officer out there by himself while everybody else is asleep, and that way if something happens to them, we don't know. But they are, we have to give them an 8-hour rest period, and that we'll be able to cycle through with the 3. I can't tell you exactly how much that's gonna cost yet. We're still meeting with HR to figure out salary levels and Zach, with fringe benefits and everything.
Do you have adequate space here for 4 more people?
Yes, we have 10 bunk rooms, so we're actually set up to where we can run a 10-person shift on down the road eventually if we ever get that big.
So Josh, back up. If this is the time to ask this question. So the issues in the summertime, July 4th week, overcrowded, everybody, people are getting stupid. This will help that, certainly.
Yes.
Not that you still may have to hire some part-time, but
We'll bring some, yeah, we'll have additional slots. So currently, we do peak time.
Mhm.
We'll add in extra positions on the schedule and people can sign up for those.
Yep.
We would still do that.
Right.
Probably not as much of it. We wouldn't need as much of it. But we, like 4th of July, you're gonna have to have more people.
so factor that reduced overtime in when you're calculating how much the new position is gonna cost.
And just a little background on that. So in 2015, from what I've been able to determine, 2015 is when we switched from 4 people on shift to 5. And in 2018, we went from 5 to 6 with the increase in building and everything, but we have not had a increase since 2018.
Are you able to go to the 7th person for just the peak season? I'm reading your notes there.
So the problem with going to a 7th person for the peak season, because this was brought up. We tried that with seasonals before. The problem is to guarantee that we have those staffing, it has to be a full-time position. And when we had that seasonal full-time position, it got to the point where we couldn't hire anybody for that because we're saying, hey, we're gonna hire you full-time for 3 months, but in 3 months, we gotta go find another job. And the way the law enforcement retirement works, any breaks in service that counts against you. So we just weren't getting a lot of.
I asked the question because it was position in season there and I thought I understood that wasn't gonna work.
So, and we also, so when we switched to divisions, that law enforcement division, their law enforcement, we require a certain level of experience, outside experience. But we're also sending them to fire. So it also will provide us with 7 firefighters on a structure fire call instead of 6. Because they will be trained, they will be certified, they'll be ready to go for fires as well. And so with a 6-person shift, we have what we consider minimum staffing at 5. Because inevitably somebody's gonna be on vacation, somebody's gonna be out sick or doctor's appointments or whatnot. We do that during the off season to try to cut down some of that overtime. And then there in the end season, we'll try to fill that 6th spot regardless. If somebody calls out sick, we'll have, hey, somebody come in and fill that spot. If we went to 7 per shift, that new minimum standard or minimum staffing level would be 6. And you have 6 people at all times on the island.
All right, I should have sacked this, but you think you'd be able to calculate the savings in overtime to offset the cost of the salaries?
That year.
Possibly. I think we can calculate that. It just got to get the data up front.
Yeah, it could be a guesstimate, just a rough back of the napkin thing.
I mean, I know at one point a lot being spent on overtime in public safety.
And to state the obvious, we add people, we add equipment, we add this paraphernalia that comes with every person that gets added. So when we're looking at it, obviously we're going to be looking at the whole shouldn't match.
The next thing was the purchase and implementation of Power DMS. So Power DMS is a program done by NeoGov. It gives us a platform to keep all of our records in, our policies, our internal Department of Public Safety policies. And so the policy module will reduce risk because right now we have a 1-word document that has all the policies just in a single Word document that's listed. This will give us the ability to, if there's a change in a policy, it immediately goes out to everybody. Everybody has to read it and sign digitally that they've read and understood it. It gives us a little more accountability for if something was to go wrong or someone did something, we can say, hey, you signed it right here, but you knew better. And also it puts everything on the web. So it's a web-based site. So anybody can access it anytime. If they have a question, like, I can't remember, I'm pretty sure we have a policy against this. All they gotta do is hit the search bar and type in a keyword and they can see the policy. The next part of that, Power DMS is the standards module. The standards is what is required. We are required to have Power DMS in the standards module. If, for the NCLEA, the accreditation that we're trying to go through for the law enforcement. So, what it does is it allows the standards module goes in hand with the policy module to make sure that there's a policy in there that meets each standard that we're required to obtain. And also NCLEA can go in to our Power DMS and look at that so that we fast track the accreditation process. And then the last module is what they call READY. It is a field training. Currently, our field training manual books are just paper and a binder. We tell the officer to try to keep up with it, and we go in and try to check them off on things. This will give us the ability to go in there and customize what we want them to know and feel comfortable with before we release them to go out and do their own thing. I also put it in there so that there's no sitting down at the end of the shift, trying to write everything in that happened throughout the day. You can go in and do it as it's happening. Say if they're training on the law enforcement side, then make a traffic stop. You can go in there and put it right there. You make a traffic stop today, like courteous, met all the requirements. If they're doing the fire and EMS, we ran a stroke call and he followed the standard protocols that Brunswick County and the state of North Carolina set up. It gives us a little bit more accountability and also being able to say, we know that they're ready. So it's separated out by modules. You buy it by the module. There's the recurring cost plus the one-time you initially board. For FY 26, the total will be 16,425 to get it up and going, and then the current would be 11,425. Again, I really think this would be a benefit for us. The FCO module to keep everybody, so we have that. But these two, if we want to continue on with NCLEA, we have to have this. So.
Do we have to have the software or do we have to have a way of accrediting?
That was the
So
question.
NCLEA requires either, and we've established this one as the better option. You either have to have LexiPol software or Power DMS. You have to have one of those two.
Okay.
It is a requirement because that's how they're able to go into and make sure that you are meeting all your standards at all times.
Okay.
Josh, training to use it involved, simple, whatever.
So the sheriff's office is accredited. I had not used it before I started working there, and it's simple enough that you learn it in a shift.
Okay.
I mean, it's basically just a place to keep everything.
Got it, got it.
Drone team equipment upgrades. So FY 26 will bring in a minimum standards for public safety drone pilots for Brunswick County. It is set to go to vote later this month. From everything that has transpired over the last few months, it will pass. And when that passes, in order to operate a drone as a public safety personnel, you'll have to meet the minimum standards. They are going to push it until after July 1st because of budgetary reasons. But so the minimum standards include training requirements and specification requirements for the drone. So the training requirements, be a pilot, you have to have FAA Part 107. Currently, all of our drone pilots already have it. You'll have to attend a 14-hour basic public safety drone pilot class. All of ours will need to do that. Now you will have to do 40 hours in service training each year, 50% at night. You need to pass the drone pilot skills test once a year and a minimum 1 hour documented flight each month. We don't have any issues with that. We already are doing that. And, you'll have to take the FAA exam every 2 years. That's not something that we're gonna be able to avoid when they do the minimums. We use our drones quite often, not just for public safety use, but also for village purposes. In fact, Mr. Cree was talking about it yesterday, how they're coming into the creek. We need to keep a good eye on it. Well, this is how we do that. We use our drone to provide the village with. So we will need to meet this requirement. The requirements for the drone specs, it's got to be equipped with an RGB lens, zoom, and infrared thermal camera. Ours currently does not have that. The drone that we have does not have that. You have to have 4 spare drone batteries at all times, 1 spare controller battery. This is a big one, IP rated for inclement weather. The drones that we currently have, with this dredging project, we've been trying to get pictures every 4th day. Problem is if it's raining, our drone can't go up. If it's, so we need to be able to meet that. Drone controller has to have its own display plus be able to project onto the others. That's for that's the public safety side of command centers. So the command officer can see the drone seeing. Ability to attach payloads such as a searchlight, speaker, or payload drop. I don't know if in the news you may have seen where Oak Island has this payload drop already in place, and they're dropping rescue buoys out in the swimmers in distress. Well in advance before the jet ski can get there, and a charging system, some sort of charging system, auxiliary anti-collision, and red and blue lights to identify. So to meet those requirements, the Matrice M30T will meet all of those requirements. To get the package where we have the wireless display is required, the portable power supply, it's gonna cost $19,689. Now that does come with a warranty, 3-year warranty, so that if anything happens, we're covered. But so that's what we would, the equipment that we currently have, the drone that we currently have, once this minimum standards goes into effect, none of my people can fly the drone any longer. Not for, because they're public safety employees, they can't even do it for the village. So
Josh, I don't want to slow you down too much, but how many people do you have?
currently have 4.
4.
Yep.
And do we need 4?
That's 1 per shift.
1 per shift? That's what I thought you were figuring. Okay.
It sounds like we have no choice but to do these upgrades if we want to fly a drone. How much is it going to cost to do the training?
So the training, I'm not exact, so the training is done. So this 40 hours of in-service is done here in Brunswick County. So it's gonna be a matter of sending them off to that. It's done, 50% of it done at night, 50% is done during the day. All the daytime portions, they'll go to the training if they're scheduled for shift. One of the 3 command staff members will just take their spot on the shift. And the nighttime training. So we have budgeted, we have a training line item in our budget that we try to calculate exactly how much we're gonna need each year, send everybody's required training plus optional training. This will now be considered required training, but it was already put in as option training anyway. So to tell you the exact amount, I don't know, because everybody makes a different, there's different levels of salaries.
I was just trying to get my arms around what the total cost would be.
So as far as the class itself, it's free.
Okay.
The training classes, even this class here is free. It's all done through Brunswick Community College, which there's a public safety exemption for all those classes through the state of North Carolina. So we're paying for time. That's.
And we've already got a line item budget that you don't expect to increase greatly because of this.
Could I, Zach? You there?
I'm here.
Okay, considering that we're using this for public safety, but also for public works, this money allocated to both departments? Or is this something It's just curiosity. I mean, are we gonna try and do, if we were doing this, we do it all through the public safety budget, or is it something that goes to both?
I think we have options. I don't want to lock us in before we get too far into the budget process, but I mean, I've seen it where we split capital costs before. From an accounting standpoint, we still are going to allocate it to one department.
Got
instead
it.
of doing
Okay.
yeah. But
Um,
for budgetary
and-
purposes, you can do it how you want to.
okay, do we know, is there grant money to handle some of this stuff? Or have we looked into that at all?
I have not found it.
Okay. Okay, great.
Not great.
Station maintenance and repairs. We want to convert the large storage room that's out in the bay that's kind of a catch-all right now, into a mixed purpose room where part of it will be for oversized evidence because we're required to have that as part of the NCLEA. And in order to do that, we'll just need to, there's actually a perfect beam that goes right down the middle of the room already and attach a chain link fence with a lockable gate there. Paint refresh, if you walk around the building, we've been here since 2018. This is still contractor grade paint. It needs some refreshing. The last quote that we got for upstairs and downstairs was $50,000. That was upstairs. That was one quote. The next quote that we got was $247,000. That's On Island Company versus an Off Island Company coming over to do it. Off Island Company was the 50,000. On Island was 247. Overhaul of the geothermal HVAC system. So by the time the budget retreat comes, I'm gonna have all these numbers. We have spent quite a lot of money on trying to maintain this air conditioned system in this building, the geothermal system in this building. And I can tell you currently right now, my office and those offices upstairs have no air. And it hasn't for the last 3 weeks. And the part that we need, of course, because it's a specialized system, it's gonna be a while. And we're running into that constantly. And it's costing anywhere from, these bills are coming in for $10,000 to $50,000 to try to maintain this system. So I would like to see what it would cost to somehow change over the system to more of a conventional system that doesn't have all these issues. But also at the same time, present to you guys during the budget retreat, how much exactly we spent on this system.
We
And
have, could we also look at it from a incremental way? It's like, look, the offices, certain areas, we have to have conditioned space no matter what. Some of the other areas that are, you know, maybe less critical, that they're still on the geothermal system or,
the hybrid system.
yeah.
And a parking area for the rehab unit. So with the two new ambulances, the previous white ambulance will be repurposed as a rehab unit for the volunteers to be able to provide rehab services to us during the fires. As I don't know where you parked at this morning, but if you park around back, you'll see it's just parked out back. It's not going to be good for it to stay out in the sunshine and the weather. We would like to do some kind of metal, kind of like what we built over at Public Works, but a much smaller scale for the volunteers to have that for the rehab.
And is that because of the equipment that's inside it?
That and just also the vehicle itself, it's not good for those ambulances to sit outside, with the seals and everything inside of it and that heat.
That's what I was,
Very-
that's really what I was asking, because my car says.
All right, just a quick review of what we presented last year. We wanted to do a total 50 mile assessment. We have since completed that. By the problem in the current model, research possible solutions, develop strategic plan, cost analysis of doing that, and present the plan to the village management. What we've done so far, we've identified the complications of trying to hire triple certified people and proposed divisions within public safety and presented that to Chris and Jay and also the council. And then we went in and developed job requirements for those different divisions. And we're starting to hire based off of the last 3-4 hires have been law enforcement division hires. We're currently about to undergo a fire and EMS division hire, process, so. And we also said we were gonna, do the policy and procedures review and update. Similar committee, review it, identify the needs, pose new and present for.
Josh, that one, does that overlap with that program you were talking about? Okay.
So, so we started out by taking that one Word document and actually creating policies, individual policies with the numbers. And so we've done that with our current policy manual. We've also went out to other already accredited agencies because they're meeting the standards to get copies of their policy manuals, because why reinvent the wheel when they're already meeting the standards? And we've been identifying the need for updates. There's a lot of updates we gotta do. We're waiting to compose all this for that Power DMS, because otherwise we gotta do all the work and then turn around and do it all again to put it in the Power DMS, for their accreditation. That's all I got. And I'm well over time. I apologize.
We interrupted you a lot.
Covered a lot of ground, man.
Thanks, Josh.